on all the social media platforms. We are going live.
We are indeed.
Welcome to another episode of Nigh Midnight. I'm one of your
Impromptu.
hosts, Impromptu, with a special guest today, thrown together. I'm Elgin.
I
This is
am
my friend
Jason.
Jason.
Me.
And this is our friend Henry. Say hello, Henry.
Hello.
This is Henry. You can leave that up, but first, this is Henry. In case anyone
And
decides to call.
and as usual, we're talking about the weird, unexplained, and the macabre and everything else in between. Asking for stories like usual. We are live, so you can call in. That QR code will be up on the screen. Call in, text in, hit us up on any of the social media platforms, NIGH, MIDE, NITE, and we will talk with you and have a little chat on the podcast. We know it's thrown together, so maybe not all of our viewers are on here, but we'd love to hear from you.
And even there was that documentary. It was called Cropsy. It was the documentary that the guy made because of the legend in his town about the people that lived in the woods and how they were all it was like the hills have eyes type of story, but instead they had like escape from the mental institution. So I mean that's a story too. Like if you have a town story about we don't go into that canyon because I want to know why, because any of that. Henry, what fascinates you in the weirdest things that people have reported to have ever seen?
Actually, it's funny because I just moved back from Northern California about 6 years ago, and when I was living up there, I lived in just outside of a small town called Redding, California. But every time you
Near
drive
Mount
north,
Shasta.
you have to
Oh,
drive over Mountain Shasta,
sorry. Yeah.
and it's just funny because I lived up there for at least 2 years while we were up there. But I started hearing from people that live in the area about all this like crazy weird stuff, and I would question people like, what do you mean? And like this, but everybody just acted like it was like regular stuff when they talked about it. Like you're hanging out at the bar and you hear somebody talking about something, you just walk over like, what do you mean? So supposedly Mount Shasta, inside of it was some kind of underground layers for one of the, I guess there's three ancient humans, or like there was we were talking about the reptilians before.
Yeah.
There's the reptilians, and then there's like the bigger
The
headed
Greys.
people, I guess. Bigger. Well, I don't know if they're. I guess we would call them grays, but they're like some kind of like telepathy people, and then like the regular humans. And I guess Mount Shasta was the home of the Greys or something like
Really?
that. And there was a huge war thousands of years ago, and it wiped. They got wiped out as a species. But there's all these people that go hiking over Mount Shasta, and they say they find caves and caverns, but then like when they try to go back, it's gone. So it's like one of those weird
I've heard many.
The
like
Lumerian
local.
City, it's called.
I've heard a lot
Yeah,
of
well, the
Bigfoot
Lumerian.
reports in that area. Sorry.
Well, Lumerians, they talk about like more like Atlantean, like thousands and thousands of years ago, like 20, 30,000 years ago, when Earth was one continent. There was the Lemurians or whatever, but this is supposedly a part of that story. But I guess there was different races of humans or something like that, and the reptilians are supposedly still around, and they supposedly humans coexisted with the reptilians, and we fought against the telepathy big head people and killed all of them so that we could be free. And supposedly that was a story that happened, thousands of years ago or whatever.
Interesting.
And like I said, the Mount Shasta is supposed to be their stronghold, their last big city or something like that. And it's funny because most of the people you talk to from that area know nothing about it, but like all the old timers, the people that have been living there forever, they're the ones that will tell you crazy stories. Like they'll tell you about how they were hiking up in the mountains and found a cavern full of like crystals and whatnot, and then they try to go back and find it, and they spend their whole life trying to find that same cavern and never find it again. And just crazy stories like that from all the old miners that was said that they were up in the, or not miners, loggers. Loggers, they said they were out there logging and they would find, caves and whatnot, entrances to these underground complexes. And just funny when you start hearing stuff like that. And
Isn't that
what's
weird how
always,
like when people find caverns and stuff like that with like crazy magical crystals or something like that, like how come no one ever thinks, let me chip off a piece so I can bring it back and be like, hey, let me throw a little ping on the map here so we can get back to the same
right.
spot. It's always just like, oh man, we were at this spot. I can't remember and I don't have any proof, but
Yeah, and what's funny is I thought about that a lot too, but like now that I've had to tell my daughter's stories from like 15, 20 years ago, it's funny because they're like, well, why didn't you just use your cell phone? And you're like, well, they didn't have the cell phones didn't exist yet, or at least they existed, but nobody had one yet, And it's funny because the things that we would think of, oh, you should do, like maybe those are just because, like I said, a lot of these guys were old timers, like prior to these guys would be in their 50s and 60s. So when they're talking about when they were 20 years old, you're talking about early 80s. So maybe it was prior to all that technology and before we thought about. I've been out driving in the middle of nowhere with an actual map and gotten lost.
Is what you're saying that though these stories
Some of them are passed down, and then, like I said, a lot of those stories. See, that's what I think it's kind of like the Loch Ness monster thing, where like I think it was told and then other people are like corroborating the story down the road and stuff like that. So probably has a little bit to do with that.
On the last show, we had somebody say that in the comments that the Loch Ness monster was the ghost of a dinosaur. Actually, in the comments, somebody had chimed in with that theory.
Yeah, and that's why we can't find him, is because he's a ghost and not an actual physical being.
Interesting. What do you think about that one? Could it be the ghost of a plesiosaur of a sort?
A ghost of it? I don't know. I'd be more apt to believe that there would be an actual creature in there.
I'm more hopeful for that too. That's my thing. I'm like, I hope there actually is one of those things down there so we can find it and maybe make more of them or see why that one's alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what if it's like what do they call those things, sand dollar crabs, where now they like are almost
living
extinct
fossils?
because they're almost extinct. Because their blood is like the most sterile thing on Earth in like natural occurring Earth,
Really?
and they found that out. Yeah, so they started like hunting down those crabs, horseshoe crabs. I'm sorry, horseshoe crabs. They are like the most sterile blood, and they make like almost every medicine and every sort of like thing that they test with in the human body is made with horseshoe crab blood. So they had to like tell people like you cannot it's like super illegal for you to be caught with a live one.
From what I hear, it takes them a while to get to the point where they can have babies.
Really?
Yeah, they don't have them like it's not like a real quick cycle. It takes a long time for them to have babies. It's not like every year they have babies.
And I heard that we use them to make stitches that go in your body because they dissolve.
No way.
Yeah, I was told that when I had my heart surgery that they would use a dissolving stitch of some kind in there. Not, like they use glues now a lot more nowadays, but I was also told about that.
Here's a little tidbit I just looked up on Google. A quart of horseshoe crab blood is $15,000.
1 quart?
Yeah.
1 quart.
Wow.
But how many horseshoes you got to kill to get 1 quart is the question. Like I can't see them having very much blood. What, they got like 60 milliliters or something like that.
How many horseshoe crabs does it take to get a quart of blood? You know?
Exactly what he was saying. Like you'd have to kill a bunch. I mean, they're big, but they're not that big where you're going to get a quart of blood out of them. Like that's why they were almost hunted to extinction. And now they started farming them, and it wasn't the same quality. And now it's like they have to make a synthetic version of their blood to be as close to sterile.
Yeah. That I don't know why we farm things till they're dead. Like this is so great. It's gone so soon. As soon as we find it, you know.
Well, it could have been too that because we were farming them, maybe they adapted.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's a common thing that happens. It's an old story from Paris that there was some flowering plant that they went through and picked all the flowers because they wanted to make it a perfume, but because they overpicked that flower, for some reason the tree decided to stop producing the flowers that smell.
Interesting.
So over time, now you can't. None of those trees have that smell anymore because we picked all the ones that had the smell. So thus those ones didn't, produce. So it could have been like a natural adaptation.
I wonder why they wouldn't maybe adapt and change their smell, or maybe intensify the smell. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe I don't know much about plant botany. I'd be very interested if anyone out there who happens to find this stream can answer this question even with the chat or calling in. I'll even click that on right now. That way, and if anyone wants to, give us a call, we'll be able to get you talking to us, all three of us at the same time, hearing us and chatting. But yeah, I don't know, would a plant respond by not having the smell anymore? Like, don't they develop these things thinking that it's going to keep away? So to stop that's an interesting response. I guess what little I know about plants.
Like I said, that's just one of the things that they talk about in biology is like they over hunted, over harvested that flowering smell, and then now that plant no longer produces that smell anymore. And it's one of those things where everybody's like, oh, that's the most beautiful. Like, there's poetry written about it from the 1800s of how beautiful the smell was. And it's like, that's something that we can never experience.
The Caspian tiger, the Caspian tiger was hunted to extinction. I think they say the last report was probably 1972. So maybe a couple lasted until the early 80s, right? And I guess they were hunted to extinction because they had the prettiest stripes. Everyone had to have a rug, had to have a Caspian tiger rug. We still have the orange Bengals, but I guess these were orange from a more temperate area, more of a jungle cat, probably maybe more of a jaguar attitude. I don't know. I would like to look into it more, but again, wow, look how pretty. Kill it.
Right, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. I was just looking up some of the stuff you guys talking about too. Like, it goes down to like how, like Henry was saying, like a lot of like plants and creatures, once they start getting farmed or changed, not molecularly, but like inbreeding because of farming and all that sort of stuff, it literally like ruined their propagation, like their ability to have babies and stuff like that, to the point where like the horseshoe crab almost is gone, like that, like we were talking about. Like that's because of over farming and over what do you call it, fishing.
Yeah, I heard that we almost lost a flounder as well, off of the coast of Britain. I guess there's this huge hole that supposedly had thousands and thousands of flounders in it. But like I said, that's another fish that takes, I think it's 6 or 8 years before it has its first set of babies. So if you're pulling out hundreds at a time,
they're never able to replenish it.
Was that the sturgeon? You mean for the caviar? Or
I think it was the flounder. Like it's a flat fish, and it was off the coast of Britain, and I guess there's this big hole, like deep hole, and they used to keep fishing out of that hole. But then they eventually had to stop the fishing because they were about to lose access to that fish because of the, I think it was flounder, or maybe it was the orange roughy.
Oh,
orange roughy, maybe that's what it was.
I think maybe halibut. Halibut's a flat fish too.
I think those are other ones that they
Some
harvest for eggs, aren't they? I'm not sure for roe.
Well, that's another thing too. Is roe became real popular, and it's also used for fishing.
Yeah, it's good bait.
So
You know what I mean?
it's a good, yeah, it's a great bait along with the fact that you can eat it.
Yeah,
A lot
you're
of
right,
places eat
Henry.
it.
It was actually the halibut.
Okay, the halibut.
Oh,
Okay, that's what it
okay,
was.
interesting. I know what's really interesting about that is like a few
Well,
times.
European flounder slash halibut.
Oh,
Everybody
okay.
calls it
Uh,
different things. It is a European flounder, which looks exactly like a halibut.
yeah. My wife's
Gotcha.
mom grew up in Sierra Leone, and I guess they had tons of sturgeon back in the day, and so her mom will be like, I'm craving some caviar, and she's just like, when have you gone to a place and spent, $200 for what you're talking about? She's like, where do you think that stuff used to come from? You know what I mean? Like it's like there was a war, not anymore, but you know what I mean. And so, but it's like, yeah, she's like, I never knew it wasn't like we had it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We got sick on that stuff because it was it's when it's a natural resource.
Right when it's plentiful, you're
When
not
it's
thinking about it.
plentiful, you don't think about it. How much did it cost? Cost.
Go take one out of the ocean. It's like people who live in
Yeah,
Maine. They're not eating lobsters every day.
yeah, they don't
They're
care.
like, why? You can go grab them cockroaches out of the water whenever you want.
They probably are like,
Yeah.
you might find one who's just like, I prefer langoustines. Don't shoot me. Those little
I'm a
ones.
langoustine man. Sorry. Yeah, the
No,
little ones.
no.
I do think they're sweeter, in my opinion, too. But
They've
just
got a
me.
sweetness. They are good. I don't usually
Can't
go
eat none of
for.
those. I'll die.
Oh, that's right, Henry and the shellfish. It's not
Yeah.
often. Let's see.
That's crazy too, because when we were a kid, didn't my dad make jambalaya all the time or gumbo?
Until I was like, I think I was like 13, maybe 14 years old. I went to a random, I think it was a Red Lobster or something like that. And I don't even like seafood really, like personally. So I was eating like chicken Alfredo or something like that. But then like my mom was like, you got to try this crab or what, king crab or something. And I was like, all right. Dipped it in butter, ate it. And I was like, yeah, it tastes great because you just dipped it in a ton of butter and garlic. Like the actual meat by itself doesn't taste that awesome. Like it's not something that I would go out of my way to go eat. And then I remember like 10 minutes later, I was like, I can't breathe.
Wow.
And the waitress actually recognized what it was, and I think somebody that worked there had an EpiPen and hit me with their EpiPen, which I find out later on is not a good idea to do, and you can hurt people by doing that.
Well, I mean,
But
by
I guess it
sharing
was.
needles or by them having
No,
an
giving
incorrect
giving the
dose.
EpiPen. Not everybody needs to take EpiPen. The epinephrine in it. You can give somebody
Gotcha.
a massive heart attack.
It-
Only reason why I know that is because I went through that training because my ex-wife.
It's been so
we
long.
had four of them in the house,
I went
and they
through EMT
make you go
training.
through the training.
Yeah, I went
Yeah,
through EMT
like I
training.
said,
just don't
I didn't
remember.
find. I find out later on that you're not supposed to do that. But supposedly, she saved my life. The ambulance ended up coming, but by that point, I was able to breathe. And then they were like, "All right, you're good," and then just rolled out.
So
And they were like, "You should probably go to the hospital."
I am actually curious about that. Is it that he may also have been allergic to the EpiPen, or that
No,
he might not
no.
have been in a real anaphylactic
I think they
shock
base
to
it off
where-
of weight.
Yeah, it's a dosage
it's
and
a
a weight
dosage.
thing. So
Okay,
it's a
that's what I
dosage
thought off
because
the bat.
not all EpiPens are equal because
Yeah,
you
okay,
might
that
have
makes
an
sense.
allergic reaction to something that's slight,
That
and the
makes perfect
epinephrine that's in
sense.
it makes your heart race. It's
Yeah.
adrenaline. It's literally like a synthetic adrenaline to make it course through your system really fast and get cleaned out.
Yeah.
So if they give you too high of a dosage, like you can have a massive heart attack.
That makes sense. I was curious. That makes perfect sense.
Like I said, I find out later on you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, that sounds very dangerous. I guess
You're not dead. Quit complaining.
you'd have to be.
That's what I always say. Like I'm happy she did it.
Yeah, of course.
You never know how long those ambulances take.
Now, how old were you again? And you say, and you have had heart issues.
I was like,
recently, though.
I
What do you
was.
think?
Oh, the heart stuff.
What do you think?
Heart stuff.
Did you ever get checked out in between those? Do you think that someone might have said, "Hey, did you get shot with way too much epi?"
The problem is when you were a kid, you had an
Do you know what I
epinephrine
mean?
shot.
Like, do you think that could have happened where
No, it
you
wasn't
got
that.
checked
It
out?
was
No, like a contributing factor maybe,
bad
or
valves. Just born with bad valves.
just out of curiosity. Now that we were on that, and you know, it had already come up about, you know, what you said, and I'm just like, just in case, you never know.
You know, a funny story I have about a little bit of paranormal stuff with epinephrine pins, by the by.
Interesting.
So one time, my wife, who, like I said, I've had to stab her a few times with that EpiPen. One time, I shot her with it because she was having an allergic reaction and swelling up and couldn't breathe and such. And right before I was gonna stick her with the pin, because you're supposed to like do it in the thigh, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm seeing everybody." And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know, because she's losing oxygen because she can't breathe. So she's starting to hallucinate. And she's like, don't hit me with the pin. Just wait. I can see everyone. I was like, there's no way you're seeing people. It's me and you. Like, you're insane. But then after she came out, she was like, "Yeah, behind you, all these people were watching over to make sure that you took care of me." I was like, "What?"
That sounds extremely congruent with what people talk about with the spirit molecule or dimethyltryptamine, DMT, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, that was so weird that she was saying that, like, she was saying that it was like her family was behind me, like kind of like waiting for me to do it at the right moment to save her, sort of feel. I'm like, that's crazy. Back then, that's crazy. Now I'm like,
interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, never know.
That you know, those are those moments people think where you are closest to being able to see things. You know, that's where that will come up the most often. Where you know, people say that, you know, things happen to, you know, kids during their young teenage years or adolescent, their change, right? You know, for men and boys.
Well, my father he was a little crazy. He used to believe that babies could see angels.
Just babies, though.
why baby? Why
I don't.
baby?
I don't know. His whole theory was like, if you ever watch a baby, like they'll just like look off into the distance and see something, and you won't see it, and they're looking at it. I'm like, yeah, they don't got neck muscles.
Right? They can't hold their head up.
Yeah, there's that for sure.
But he used to swear like that they could see stuff that you can't see.
That's interesting. You know, my
that's always wild.
My dog. Sorry about that. Clearing my throat. Into the mic. My dog is a Australian Shepherd, and I guess they were. I hear a lot of stories that sound conflicting to me. I've heard that they're, you know, actually created in California. I've heard that, you know, old you know, tribes, old native people.
Australian Shepherds.
Well, see, I
go
guess
ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess that they're bred from. They're called Australian Shepherds because they were bred with Australian cattle dog. I'm not sure. I could be very wrong, but these are the things that I thought I was hearing. But I also heard someone say that, yeah, like native tribes would call them the ghost eye dog. I'm like, wait, how's that happen if they were made in California? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, but you know, sometimes, and all dogs do this, but with like the staring and like the barking at something and like the 3 a.m. hour, and you know what's going on with all that. Has anyone's dog ever let them know that there's a ghost in the house? Scan right there. That'll actually link you to the way to call us, and then we'll put you on. I'm literally looking at the screen waiting to see if anyone wants to want to talk. We're here.
My dog's never done that, but I mean, like every other dog, they can hear really well. And he has like been standing outside when I was scared. He'll like run up to the door, and then I'm like, oh Jesus, now I'm really scared, because if he heard something, I had a weird feeling. Is this real? You know?
Yeah, dogs are weirdly attuned to things. I took a walk with him during the Halloween time, and you know, as we were walking, someone had a little goblin out front instead of a jack-o'-lantern, or it was like a skeleton of a dog, and we're walking, and he didn't want to get near it.
Caught his eye.
It's on the path that we were walking that direction, so he noticed there's something off about that. He got close, And it was nighttime when the first time he saw it, so it was kind of funny. Like, he's creeped out by the Halloween decoration. That's pretty funny to me. And then, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, some people apparently believe that their dogs warn them. What is Alaska's Timmy in the well? It's like,
If a dog can see that, can a dog also be psychic? Is my question. And I know that's going to lead into the other questions.
Well, look, I mean, you know that I do have some interesting ideas that even I don't even believe the ideas I have. So I like to preface
put them to Henry.
I don't believe my ideas.
I don't.
That was a great conversation.
That I don't even necessarily believe the things that I think I might believe. I just like to entertain many a different notion based on the information experiences I've gone through. Do a lot of them conflict? They all do. But I just think we all tell ourselves a story to go to bed at night. Mine's fun too. I don't know. It's just as far as anything psychic, I think one of the oldest things deep rooted into man. There's a reason why like every culture like usually likes dogs, like for one way or another. Like a lot of us, we bond with dogs. I think we're psychic with dogs. I'm telling you. I think that us and dogs, I think that like when you bond with the dog, like
psychically connected, huh?
Man, I'm telling you, sometimes like he'll give me a certain look and it's a specific thought in my head, like what? I'm telling you, like it's in your I don't know. I like dogs a lot and I know I'm weird and everything but about dogs, but if there is any psychic,
I've had conversations with my dogs and my cats, but I don't know if they're answering me back. But I definitely had the whole conversation with them.
I'm telling you.
I mean, when they do, you have to kill them because there can only be one. But besides that,
well, shouldn't you leave one then? Don't you need to like?
Definitely not. Definitely not, because if you kill the one, you get their powers. Haven't you watched any 80s Highlander movies at all? I mean, good Lord.
You gotta watch the Highlander. Only be one.
I've watched not only those phenomenal movies
and the series,
Christopher Lambert, and starring Adrian Paul. I've watched them all. All right.
Okay.
The crossover film.
So
Duncan and
I've caught myself doing this more than once, where I have like seen somebody looking at me and I'm like, oh my God, they can read my thoughts. So then I start thinking random outrageous things just to throw them off of my fact that they might be reading my thoughts. And I know that's like a weird paranoid delusion that I'm having, but who knows? Maybe one day I threw them off.
You gotta
wear my tin hat.
It'd be really interesting. I wonder what Mark Hanks is doing, because I have a story, but I want Mark to tell it. Because I think
let's get him on
that one. Reach out to Mark. Let's see where this guy at. I did send him today, Surfside 6, right? And so, but that was because Elgin said it to me. You know what I mean? Of course, that is a Family Guy reference. Yo. Wanna be on a podcast? And then
I should tell him it's our podcast.
Yeah, it's ours. Hang on, here's a link. I'm just gonna do that, and then yeah.
I like that you're just dropping him right into this, like no warning, no nothing. This is it's gonna be the most true story ever, because he's not gonna have time to edit it and make it better. Exactly, it's gonna be straight raw, like.
Yeah, that's my favorite. My favorite is when one of your buddies is retelling a story and you're like, bro, I was there, right? None of that happened.
That's not at all how that happened. Henry,
you're like, that's not how any of that went down.
You told a story like that to me one time. I'm joking. I've said stories like that too, man.
We all tell stories.
That.
That's how you gotta do it.
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to the fact that
nobody wants to hear no plain story.
My friend is at least right about the fact that it was a big fish. All right, but all right, you stand over there to hear. That's how big it was. All right, don't let him be modest. We fucking battled.
Right, he almost capsized the boat.
Yeah,
dude, it was a bass.
That's hilarious. Almost capsized the boat.
Be like it was a carp.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Exactly. Like we were on a 20-foot pontoon, dude. There's no way.
Be like we were standing on the edge of a pier.
Right? We weren't on a boat. It's like this every time you hear the story, it keeps changing. You're like, yeah, it was Jaws' son for sure.
Oh gosh.
So, yeah, I just sent him all the required information. If we have him pop up, we very well may have another guest coming on, another old friend. Me and Elgin have friends, and
We should probably preference what the story is about. Give us a tidbit, a little lead in.
Cop on Topaz. You guys know this story.
Oh, okay. This is a gem.
This is why
This is a
This
gem.
is why I'd rather Mark tell it, but he's not getting back to me quite yet.
This has to do with some psychic stuff too.
Which
If
yeah.
you believe, if you believe,
If you believe, Mark Hanks may have been a witness to a thing, and I don't. It's a crazy story. He's not getting back to me yet, but it's all right. It's all right.
this is sort of an inside joke between all of us friends. We all grew up together. This was right before the saga of Chicken Sandwich, Henry, where we did that chicken sandwich thing.
This is
So
before chicken sandwich.
this is
Okay.
before the chicken sandwich saga, I call it, because that story has been told probably 1,000 times, and every time that story gets worse and worse. Like what we did, I'm like, dude, I don't remember doing all of that. I remember it being funny, but like,
Well, I heard you have to drive
it
20
got
miles
super detailed.
outside of Pahrump to find the spot where it's all buried. I'm joking.
Legitimately, it started off like, oh, we threw a sandwich in someone's car because they were being douchebags, and then it went to like the sandwich bounced and each piece of the sandwich hit on the dashboard.
Oh,
Like,
so it became like JFK with the magic bullet. You know what I mean?
yeah, it became like, oh man, there's two shooters and two sandwiches on the grassy knoll.
You know, if anything, I don't want to propagate too many conspiracy theories, except, of course, for the one I said on episode 1, which, if anyone remembers, the reason why we can't find giant bones is because we're the descendants of giants. That's why every time we find descendants of other human beings, we keep saying, oh, we found hobbits. No, I think we found
They're
humans.
pygmies,
I think
that's
we found
why.
humans. No, those are the last of the humans we haven't hunted to extinction yet. That's my theory. I think that we're the giants, or we're like you know, that's
We're the leftovers of Nephilim.
yeah, that's what it is. We're all the big ones, you know. Like, you know, people say, you know, oh,
Well,
why not? Sure.
My question
I don't
with
believe that.
why
I
not
don't
finding
believe that, but it's a
you know
fun way to think
giant
about it.
bones would
Yeah.
be, what if they had a cultural preference of burning the bodies,
Or putting them in the ocean, like most
or throw them in
Vikings.
the ocean? Yeah, like I'm just saying, like there could have been a million reasons why.
You know, they find when they find Neanderthal bones and all that, they are putting it with. They find that they have like society. I guess they have. You know, they have burial mounds. You know, and stuff. They have places where they had. You know, they would rest people, and apparently they had some kind of area that seemed to be like revered, like they would only use it for maybe a service or some kind of a remembrance, you know. And I mean, at least for whatever reason, they were close enough to human that we could breed with them, like we're all the same, so we're all the same or whatever. But for whatever reason, I guess they would mature to adulthood like the way we go one like baby to 20 years old. I think they do that in about 13 years. I think they're about 13, 14 when they would, you know, and they did like that whole, you know, we cut the bones and we thought we were looking at a 20-year-old, and then, you know, like the rings said, you know, something else, like, you know, maybe growth things or whatever, but you know. And then they what about the Denisovans? Have you heard about those ones now that they find in the Denisovans? Or another
Never heard of them. No.
Another Homo sapiens, you know, the particular kind of human species we are. They're another cousin that apparently the only like, you know, we apparently have up to, you know, 4%, Neanderthal DNA. If you have any Western European in you, you could have up to like 2 to 4, depending on both sides or not. Or there are some, I believe they're Polynesian and the what is it? The native tribes to Australia before Britain and everyone else found out that that place was there. They still have
The Aborigines.
Aborigines. Thank you. I could not think of and that's an okay word. That just means that they're native. They're right. They're of the place.
Yeah, Aboriginal.
Aboriginal. Yeah. My brain just was like when I did think about it. Wait, is that okay? Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, they have the highest concentration of that DNA apparently. And if I was just reading some woo website, that's fine too. I find it fascinating, I think that there was definitely cataclysms. Do you know about that separated people and made us forget, in like long times and.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that
we have already lost.
Well, I'm just saying, like right now. Well, like just like right now, if the world was to end for some, like let's say they had the virus apocalypse, like we were talking about earlier, and how many of us know how to manufacture a vehicle? How many of us know how to manufacture an iPhone? How many of us could repair satellite technology?
Well, I also think like how much of that would be useful.
That's true too. We've come to rely on these things, but they're so new. Hopefully, there's enough sense in people to, catch back on. I guess. I mean, but it would be hard. Some people look. I mean, look what I'm doing. My living room is set up in a, I'm like plugged into the internet here, I'm like
completely being irradiated right now.
I'm like Job from Lawnmower Man, you know what I mean? It's like, did you really care?
I just watched that the other day.
But were you really nice to me?
Like I said, if something did happen, who are the people that would survive? Is the people that, reject technology on a certain level.
Yeah, all the primitive people.
And, go out there and live like even like modern humans that are super into like living survival and all that. Most of those guys reject modern society and whatnot. So if they were to be the ones that survive, they definitely wouldn't try to propagate things from our society. Like their goal wouldn't be to create a cell phone right away or something.
That's the Atlantis, where things are lost and forgotten, and it only takes 250 years for a 2023 model whatever car to 250 years for it to just become part of the earth, just straight up again, right? So some of the ideas about people say, oh well, how did they just go straight from what they were they were just banging rocks against rocks and then they were just building with stone, they built the pyramids. It's like, no, I think they probably had a period of time where they used a lot of paper. And you know what I think turns to dust a lot faster than rocks? I think paper. I'm sure that they talk about papyrus.
Well, my theory on stuff like that.
Drawing in the sand, for God's sake.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
my theory on how humans advanced, like even nowadays, you got to ask yourself how many like Nikola Teslas are not being found because they're living in some third world country trying to survive. There's that story of the kid who in India somewhere who got a hold of a elementary math and then was able to extrapolate all the way into, calculus and things of that nature.
There's a documentary.
Yeah. So the question,
on HBO, but yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I'm saying the question becomes is like, how many of those people, how much human capital are we losing due to the fact that those people exist? So my theory on like, how do you go from one level to the next level is like, what if there was an Albert Einstein in ancient Egypt who was like, this is how we got to do it. This is how we got to build this. But I think that the reason why older societies or whatever you want to call them probably didn't, they probably chose to look at science like magic and tried to keep that information to a select few And then if those few didn't make it, then how easy is it to lose the information? Like, for instance, like my thing is Nikola Tesla. Like he had so many ideas and so many cool things, and then our government swoops in there and grabs all the papers off of the wall out of his little apartment or whatever it was, and then we never hear about any of that stuff ever again. And it's like, if he like if
I've looked
like
done a
what
lot
could
of
have he
research
have
into him as well.
created?
Yeah, I've looked into that. All of a
Like
sudden,
I'm saying,
I
like
never looked
what
up.
could have he created if there wasn't the profit incentive that worked against him, and all the little stories that they have about him? Like what could he have made
Well,
if he hadn't gotten cynical
I
and
think too,
decided that
like,
humans weren't worth it?
if he hadn't been forced into obscurity, I mean,
Sure.
if he had notes that are precious still, then I don't think that he had ever. I'm sure it's a shock when you know that you can revolutionize the world and no one else wants to see it, and that happens all the time.
Get cynical.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, it's Plato's allegory of the cave, right? You're the guy who gets out of the cave, and then someone breaks you of your chains. I mean, imagine the world. You always live in the cave. One person gets out of the cave, and then they see this world, and there's this big bright thing, and it's not just shadows. There are colors in the world, and water and all this stuff. You go back to the cave and you tell people there's a world up there, and they're just like, you're a heretic, you're not a believer, you're
a
not
crazy
one
person.
of us,
Yeah.
you're out. You know what I mean? And that's obviously
The other thing too that they
concept,
say about Tesla is that he was a big believer in doing experiments in your mind, I guess, is what his whole genius level thing was. So
really.
even if he did write notes, it would be hard for somebody to track his notes because there would be such leaps from what he wrote to what he wrote to what he wrote, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like he would just do
yeah, like half the
like
conversation in his head.
3D
exactly.
building in his head
And
anyway,
that's
right.
yeah, because I remember when I was like in school doing math, it was easier for me to do a lot of the math in my head and just write down some of the numbers along the the problem, as opposed to filling out the problem the way they want, completely showing all your work. It was just more effort to do all of that. So I was able to just get the right answer by writing out a smaller amount of numbers. But then the teachers were like, "Oh, you're wrong because you're cheating."
Show
And
your
it's like,
work.
"Oh, okay, show your work or else you didn't do it."
I was in college.
It's like, how do I get all the right answers?
I was in college. I tested very low, for math, for English, and comprehension and all this stuff. Like, don't have to take any of like these, basic classes. Like I would start in the higher one, but for math, certain things are just hard for me. Like I'm good at percentages and decimals and fractions and shapes. Really, I mean, mostly because I've only ever had to, cook or calculate if I got a good tip or a bad tip or
Yeah.
So like
Math you use.
I was always better at those maths, but algebra with the formulas, it would baffle me. Except for Pythagoras, a squared, b squared, c squared, those ones easy, but algebra was tough for me. I went to this one algebra
My whole
class,
thing
I
about
showed him my
math.
work. I showed the guy my work, and I showed him what happens in my head and why and how I need him to, and how I'm trying to figure out how to do the formula. And I drew this picture of a square, and I broke it up, and I just stopped it, and I go when I see these numbers in my head, I think of a square. I do this, and then so the number is 2 or whatever, and he's just like, "Are you fucking with me?" And I was like, "Don't do that. I'm not trying to be like." I'm like, "Look, it's stupid. I have really bad ADHD, man. I've read a lot of stuff I don't even remember. I might have seen a picture one time that makes this thing easy if I relate it to this thing. I'm not great at math. I want you to help me figure out how to do your formula, so maybe I can get to the class where this applies." Right? Like,
Well, that's kind of like how they started teaching Common Core. That's why, because like people weren't understanding it the right way, and that is like the most cockamamie math I've ever seen in my life.
the system
That's math masturbation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like math for a person who doesn't understand English numbers or any type of arithmetic.
Yeah. And
Like I said, I think that the thing with math, I think they need to start teaching it kind of in the way that we discovered math. If we taught math in a timeline like that, I think it would just make more sense because there's so much stuff in math that we don't need to know, but it's like, hey, we figured it out for these reasons, and then kind of explain it like that. But as opposed to, I hate that they just throw formulas at you with no context and just tell you, here's you gotta memorize this, you gotta memorize that, and it's like, why do I have to memorize that? And it's funny because I remember when I was in grade school, the teachers were like, you're not always going to have, the ability to go on the computer and look it up. You're going to have to memorize these things. And it's like, I've always thought that was a stupid reason. And then now you have Google in your pocket.
you don't need anything.
And you have a calculator. They're like, you're not going to be able to carry a calculator everywhere. So you're going to have to learn how to do this. And it's like,
well, that's actually a kind of a conspiracy theory thing too, where they talk about how the reason why we're taught the way we were taught is because of the older generation, and they're not having any foresight into coming into new technologies. So we were all taught based upon old technologies, and the old technologies never being able to fail. Which, I mean, if you think about it, like, yes, you could do math with an abacus in any form, right? But you know what I mean? Is an abacus a form of technology? Sure, because if you smash abacus on the ground, now can you do the same math? Yeah, it doesn't make a difference. You know what I mean? Like, if they taught in schools the way that most teachers like to teach, actually, where it's I forget the word, but basically where you're using it in the form that you would normally use it. So like for me, like the Pythagorean theory never made sense to me until I was in high school and I was doing carpentry. Mm-hmm. And that's how you figure out the pitch of a roof. It's super simple when you know that. But until then, it's like, it makes no sense to you at all. You're like, why am I doing it that way? That's the dumbest thing ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It doesn't feel natural to do things certain ways. But then you find out there's a formula, and even though the formula does get you there, it feels unnatural. You know what I mean?
Yeah, such a forced way of doing things. And it's like, if they just were like, hey, here's how this applies in your life, you can do your taxes using this. Then it'd be like, oh, wow, you learn it, and then forever you kind of remember it because, oh, yeah, they talked about doing taxes. I know how to do that. I remember how to do it.
I think one of the best examples, especially here in America now, me and my friends here, we're in our mid-30s, right?
I'm 25. Don't you lie to these people.
All right, fine. You know what I mean? I just got I'm 36. I can't think of a joke. But anyway, so we're about mid-30s-ish. And so when we were young, they had this product. And not only was it a product to help your kids get a head start before kindergarten, but employed in the actual educational school was, do you guys know where I'm going?
Gate.
Phonics.
Oh, yeah, phonics.
Hooked on phonics works for me, but not just that, but teachers would use that. They can't do that anymore because we don't actually have a language that like is phonetic, but phonetic is where the root of language is, right? It's phonetic is speech. So where I'm getting at, I know I'm doing a roundabout, but the thing that helped me learn math, I am so much better with math than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's because I got a B plus, if I remember correctly, but it wasn't like an A. But I took an Arabic class in college. The only class I passed, right, it was Arabic. I got a B plus, and I really enjoyed it. Now the professor who was teaching it, he was not only very fluent and knowledgeable about the Arabic language. He spoke it natively, but he also was a mathematician, so he showed that Arabic only uses the math side of the brain. It's a language that only uses the math side of the brain, that you can create words, conjugate verbs, and all this stuff with I can't remember what they are at the moment. It's been years since with algebraic formulas to make words and figure out the proper way to put a word together. And after I took that class, I have been so much better at math. You know, it's
Well,
so weird.
it's like they say, you know, math being the universal language, where
Hmm.
even like Close Encounter of the Third Kind, like once he figured out the math, he can translate that into music, and then that's a language that, you know, other creatures and cultures can you know, communicate with. That's kind of the way I think of that too. Like even more so, like you could teach someone in so many different ways that doing these old arbitrary, archaic formulas and just shoving them down someone's throat never will make it. It'll make us dumb and make us not be able to do it. I mean, that, like we were talking about, you know, stories passed on from generation to
Yeah.
generation. Like the way our parents did math is nowhere near the way that we learned math.
No.
You know what I mean? Or language for that matter. I mean, when I was in middle school and like well, elementary and middle school, I was in that GATE program, and I was reading all those books from oh man, I forget his real name, William Shatner, excuse me. And he had all these cool like sci-fi detective books. Yeah, you can roll your eyes. I don't care. I loved them.
I love him still. I just can't
And
believe I didn't hear
he had
about the
all these like
books.
funny words in them that were like Latin-esque and like all weird that you would never like read anywhere. And then I found out about entomology,
Yep.
and that like became my world. Like
Yep. I
I could
love it.
look up a word, find where it's from,
The
know where
root.
its root is,
Hmm.
what the meaning of it is, and how like 8 different ways how this word relates to something else.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Etymology of root and names, especially. Like I like that, and that's why I knew so much about the Caspian tiger, because I'd always looked for a good explanation for my name because of what I was told. You know, it's like, oh well, it's like a Jewish name, and I was like, well, but where does it come from? What's it mean though? You know what I mean? Like it's got to come from
Yeah, the
somewhere.
history behind it.
It's got to have a nation of origin or a cultural sound to it somewhere.
That
And finally,
that
someone
also
told
kind of
me,
brings me back to
yeah.
like what you guys are talking about, like having a cataclysmic thing. Like we were talking, I think it
But
was
I'm a
me.
Caspian tiger, by the way. A last name. Go on.
It was me or Henry or me and you. I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about like the Tower of Babel in the Bible. You know what I mean?
I think that was you and I. We were talking about that whole
Like that being such a
concept. Yeah.
cataclysmic, like the change of the world where races and languages and mindsets change. You know what I mean? Like if you believe in that sort of thing, like that
And I think
that
that
could be another thing, like, you know, like that.
I think that could be the tale of, think of it as Atlantis in a way. Yes, they may have applied it to, Babylon, but, the idea of that as well as a concept is older than even Babylon, right? And so if that is one of the original stories of, Atlantis, it really says that there was a whole world that could communicate with each other. Think about a planet with something that could,
Well, known
bridge
world
the gap.
anyway, you know.
Well, I mean, if you imagine us right now with the internet, right now
I would say we're more global than any other time period has ever been.
that we know of,
I,
that we know
I
of.
mean, just because the internet, like our internet age, if you talk about like stuff with like my kids, for example, I talk about like not being able to communicate with my family unless you had to pay an exorbitant fee, and they live in California. And it was like $5 an hour, so you just didn't do it
Until 7
because you
o'clock,
couldn't.
finally.
Yeah,
7
you couldn't
o'clock
make a
is your
phone call, and then
nighttime
technology
minutes.
caught up when nighttime and
Nighttime
weekend minutes were
minutes.
like, hey, don't call me out until after 9 or Saturday, Sunday, and it's to
But
them it's
don't
like,
text
what are
me
you
unless
talking
it's
about?
an
It's so simple.
emergency, because those
Yeah, because
rates,
it's 20
my
cents a text
goodness.
message.
15 cents text
Yeah,
message.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I reply, it costs me too. So everybody's getting charged. You know what I mean? But that world doesn't exist. You know what I mean? It was such a
So, but
huge cataclysmic thing to have the internet come upon the world, because now it's smaller.
but
Whereas before, you wouldn't hear the news of the world. We never cared. You never cared what was going on in England or Somalia or none of that, because you're like, well, that's how many million miles away from me.
if a major cataclysm came and destroyed if it was a meteor, something that took out all major hubs, all cities, and most small towns, and there were only 100,000 scattered survivors left from this world here, how long would it take to get back? Would their
It
descendants?
wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
100,000 people. I don't think the world would ever get back to technology
Well, you
again.
know what I
The
mean.
level of technology.
I mean, we
I'm
have genetic
thinking it would have to
bottlenecks.
be
You know what I mean?
well into the millions, maybe even a billion.
Have you heard of Graham Hancock? Have you heard of Graham
No.
Hancock? No, he's an author. He's a reporter. He's done a lot of investigation into an idea of a cataclysm that knocked out like a society that was like a big, you know, like history before 12,000 years ago for a lot of different reasons, and he finds a lot of evidence. And
Well, I think about this. If you do the math, 6 billion, 6.6 billion people right now on the earth. And you're talking about taking out well over down to what, 0.06 of the population left alive.
Well,
The math would be,
I mean, if you're really plugging in the numbers, I'm just spitballing to make an idea of a concept because that's how far you've got to go to not.
well, I'm a believer, baby.
Oh,
I'm a believer.
Yeah, he's like, no, I'm writing down the numbers because I'm making sure he's right. Everyone, he's
I
right.
gotta make my list of who I'm bringing with me. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm not gonna,
But my question, when you think about get back to technology, my question would be, why do we believe that technology would follow the same path?
Exactly.
or also, why would we?
Exactly.
Or also, why would we ever do that again?
So
Because if we thought, hey, what this cataclysmic thing happened, why did it happen?
Well, I'm just saying, like if even if it was something so simple as like,
whether we blew
because we always,
ourselves up or
we've been
it's
thinking about
meteor,
viruses lately. What if it was something that destroyed all the farmland?
a blight,
Like, what if it was like a dust bowl, or
blight,
the
a
temperature
drought.
goes up 2 degrees, and what's that?
a blight, yeah, a drought, any of that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, yeah, just something like a potato famine or something that, because, like, let's say that as stupid as we are as humans right now in our country, I know they're all about this genetic modified garbage, but if you look at, like, for instance, potatoes and corn, there's like 2 or 3 genetic variations of those corns that we're using across millions of miles of land that we're growing, millions of carrots and millions of pounds of and it's like, what if there was something that just wiped out all that? You wouldn't have to necessarily have something like cataclysmic in that there'd be a meteor strike or anything. Like, you just need to kill the amount of food that we have available, and then there'd be a mass starvation situation. And then here's the thing: is like with our modern building techniques and stuff like that, most areas would be wiped out in less than 150 years. Like I'm saying, like this house that we're in right now would not last 150 years if nobody maintained it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely
There's
not. I mean, built-in obsolescence too. And with the technology that we have right now, we don't build anything because of capitalism first, but we don't build anything to last longer than 50 years because there's going to be better technology. That's the way, that's the difference. That's the difference between our generation, like I was saying, our generation versus our parents' grandfathers. It's like when you bought a car, a Cadillac DeSoto, it was made of 1/4-inch thick steel because this is the last car your family is ever going to buy. You're going to pass it down generation to generation for the next 5 generations, and that car is going to last forever. So we got to build it like that, you guys. Make it the best. Now it's like, hey, let's build it with plastic because when it rains, this thing will fall apart and they'll have to buy another one.
It's a different mindset, but again,
there's different profit motives and different things like that. But my question would be like, what about technologies that we did not pursue? What if, like, I don't know if you guys ever watched that or read that book, was it Dinotopia?
Yeah, that was a good one.
I
like the show too.
So
I know Cliff Notes. I don't know it all that well. I know some. Sorry.
Yeah, so the first one was just about like a sailor, and I think it was like the 1700s, that ended up crashing on an island, and the island's full of dinosaurs where everybody lives together. But as the book, there's a second book, and then there's an actual little novel that came out. It's funny because like in the second book, you realize that according to the story, there was a meteor strike and a bunch of humans and dinosaurs actually hid underground and were able to survive the meteor strike. And then when they came up to the earth, it was on that island that they're on, and they created a whole society, but they still had access to a lot of the ancient technology, and it was like crystal based technology that had like crystal batteries and things like that, and they had like mechanized dinosaurs that they could ride in or stuff like that. And it's like, my question would be, what if there's other technology or technology trees that we did not develop that could have been developed?
Well, I
believe
absolutely
that,
think
absolutely.
I agree
I'm
with
right
you.
there
Yeah,
with
because
you. I
the way
agree.
the way I look at it is like the technology that we have now is based all upon like silicone and stuff like that. And if it all got wiped out by as simple as an EMP, it's destroyed. You cannot reuse it. You can't repair it. You know what I mean? It's done. So then you have to, if you wanted to change, you know, or find communication or whatever, again, you'd have to come up with some other way of technology or some way of doing it. You know what I mean? So you could
Yeah.
communicate. I was
Well,
just
even
looking up
something
too,
so
which is
recent in our history. Go ahead.
I was just looking up something too, just really quick. We were talking about like cataclysms and simple things like that. The soybean, I don't know if you guys know about that, like what
A
a
little bit.
soybean is. So soybean is basically a man-made thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Pure GMO.
81%, yeah, 81% of the world's soybeans is man-made GMO.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. And a good portion of America's money and other countries' money is wrapped up in soybeans. It would literally take that crop falling apart to topple a few countries. You know what I mean? And really, really mess up the system because there's a lot of farms that are based off of soy and alfalfa
Yeah.
and hay and all that out here. And if they went under or if that bean became useless, there's meats, there's all kinds of stuff that they use with the soybean that would just destroy the economy.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like we don't realize, like, we're just now, because of the epidemic, we're realizing how soft and how fragile like the supply chains and different things that we have are now. But my whole theory was like, what it wouldn't take as much as we think it would take to knock down our society.
Yeah.
A lot of our society is based on the belief that the society works. You know, if that makes it, like, we all believe
We
that
fixed
tomorrow is
it.
going to be a good, yeah. So like, there's no, like, if people started like, because for instance, criminals understand that you can't stop all crime, and many criminals can do crime for years without getting caught. So it's like they realize that it's um a perception, you know, like most people don't want to do something because they're afraid of getting caught and they're afraid of paying the consequences. But then if you realize, oh God, you know, less than 1% of crime is prosecuted in the country, then how much more likely would you be, you know, to do the crime kind of idea?
Hmm.
I also think a lot with that with criminals, like a lot of that is a mindset because, you know, they don't have the mindset of, you know, not necessarily right from wrong, but it is kind of that way where like, hey, I'll do this because I can get away with it. You know what I mean? As opposed to
Mm-hmm.
like most people's morals that are easily pricked, they wouldn't do stuff like that. It's like my dad, that joke. Yeah, you know, locks are for honest people,
Hmm.
not for criminals. You don't
Yeah.
lock your door because a criminal doesn't walk up and go, "Oh, this door's locked. We better not go in here."
Yeah. You don't get uninsured
Yeah.
motorist coverage on your car because it's a law that everyone is supposed to have insurance, right? So everyone does,
Exactly.
right? Then why is the only reason why I'm all right is because of uninsured motorist coverage? You know what I mean? Like, insane. You know, look at that though. I type it into the one thing and it goes to Facebook and Twitch. Didn't go to Facebook. Went to Twitch and YouTube. Looks like that one's not
Do we have
working.
anybody log in or look?
Looks like we have someone watching on Twitch. Hello. Do you believe in old civilizations that, you know, may have had better technology than we have now? And, you know, do you think I agree with you? Maybe a little. Yeah, for sure.
Like,
But no.
again, what are we basing the, like? Because I always like, what is the point system? You know what I mean? For a society to have built the pyramids, for
Yeah.
instance, like, how many points do they get versus us building the skyscrapers that we
Or
have,
space shuttle?
a
What
space shuttle? So like,
more that
point
because
system.
ours would go away. What about Mohenjo-daro? I believe, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but there's a place in over in the Indus, you know, route area, Mohenjo-daro, I believe, and then it is saturated with nuclear radiation, not like a blast from it's like someone accidentally blew up a bomb there so many years ago, like before we ever discovered this, rediscovered possibly. That, you know, there are, you know, there's vitrified walls. You know, of course, there are the people who want to say aliens, and trust me, I want to see the proof if it was aliens as well. I would love for it to be aliens. That would be phenomenal.
First alien landings, exactly.
I also like the idea that what if humans had, what if there was an Albert Einstein, a guy who was just so smart back then that he said, and he was maybe noble guy, I think I found a power source for the whole town, and just ding ding, you know what I mean? Maybe he had noble intent. What if the first person?
Well, if you read any of the what is it, the Hindu religion,
Mahabharata,
they have
absolutely.
They have a lot of stories of flying machines, and they have stories of gods shooting each other with laser beam style.
That's the book.
Laser beam style weaponry, and
it sounds exactly.
Then they
like
have
Star Wars.
It sounds like nuclear technology, and who knows? Like I said, I believe that it's very possible that we had very, very advanced technology or things that we don't know. For instance, even if you think about like Machu Picchu and things like that, where all the stones,
3%
like the stones look like they were,
so that it all flows down properly and slowly to water everything. It's like a 3%.
Yeah, that,
grade.
and then if you look at like there's actual, the stones look like they were manipulated at like some point, like they look they, and then
like
there's ancient stories of some type of a mixture that they would make out of plants that you could pour onto stones and be able to shape the stone.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And it's like there's nothing, like we can't prove that's not a thing, and when you look at the evidence of it, you're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And then what's funny is if you look at the ancient pyramids, what people don't understand, and like if you got the computer available, you should look up the flagstones.
Oh yeah.
The ancient pyramid is not on the ground. It's on ginormous stones that make no sense of how, like we think of, okay, the pyramid, that's a lot of pyramids, that's a lot of stones to stack. The pyramid is actually on a foundation that the size of the stones, like even with modern technology, we have no way of transporting them anywhere. So how did they how did they get cut? Number two, get moved. And then how is there such precision that you can't even slide dirt down? Dust does not go down the cracks of where they built these towers. And it's like, once you start really like looking into that, you're like, holy crap, like what did they have going on? And again, I'm a hopeful person. Like I if there was aliens, great. Like, let's see. I'm also a believer that maybe there was an ancient human society that left Earth.
I'm usually more inclined
and maybe they did live.
That is what I am.
Maybe they did live. Maybe they did live on Mars or whatever, and then now they came back to come look at us, and they're probing us. And you know, what was that guy who got captured in the what was that story we were talking about earlier where he got captured and he came back with a beard?
Yeah, Travis Walton.
Who's that guy, Elgin?
Travis Walton?
Yeah, the guy who got captured and came back with a
Travis
whole beard.
Walton, yeah.
And it's a story that you can't refute, like the things that happened there. You know,
and maybe the old race, maybe they created some type of traveling technology that is warp-ish,
time dilation,
but maybe it changes time, exactly.
Yeah.
Or they stargated out of there with their hadron particle collector.
And I'm usually I like the idea of aliens too. I like the idea of a lot of things, but ultimately, when I think about what I really believe, if I had to like anything, I think that there was a class system between people. I think that the word God got turned. It was what they demanded to be called because they were better than the lower class people, right? Why not? King, what revere,
Yeah.
art,
The
and they
problem
had the
that I have with the
technology, and
idea of
they
a
could have blown themselves up.
yeah.
Right? It could have been, the whole idea
Well,
of us
saying that
turning
the
on
problem
alien
that I have
overlords. We could have just turned on other humans who. That's really the idea I have most often. Technology
yeah.
is possible.
Well, the problem that I have with aliens is how far away they would have like let's go into the evolution theory that they evolved in some other corner of the galaxy and then what they came here so that you're literally talking about a civilization that has mastered the I'm saying the civilization that has mastered the ability to travel galaxies and they come here and randomly steal people and do dumb stuff. They don't immediately
I mean, I would love to believe you and agree with you, but we go into the rainforest and pick up cockroaches and test them and
If they
grab
believe
monkeys and
themselves to
put
be a higher
lipstick
life
on them.
form, then they don't owe us an
Exactly. I was gonna say because
explanation.
we don't have to tell these smaller creatures, lower beings, what we're doing.
I mean, we haven't met. If there's an
no,
alien that
I
was so
understand
higher than
and
like,
here's the thing is
if they
like
could
I
chase like
understand
an
what you're
ant,
saying.
yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, like the amount of resources it would take to travel to it just to come like that to me seems
Yeah,
very
but
aggressive.
you're thinking of it in humanoid terms. You're thinking of it as needing resources. You're thinking of it as you need a car with fuel to travel. What if this is something that is powered by existence itself? And
If
at a
it's all
snap of a
biological.
finger, if it's a snap of the finger and they're here, why would it be such a hard task or aggressive task? It's like, hey, snap, let's pop over to Earth. Snap, let's pop over to
Quantum
Pluto.
physics,
Snap, let's
folding
pop over
space,
here.
right?
Exactly. So if it requires no resources, no time, no effort, besides the idea of hey, let's go do it because we can, i.e.,
Stargate.
conquistadors, Stargate, Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
We do because we can. Let's build a space shuttle. Why? We don't need to leave Earth. Let's do it because we can go to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need to go to the moon? Because we can. You know what I mean? That mentality has always been a human mentality or a humanoid mentality. But if you put that into another creature who has better technology or better resources, like you're talking about, who can do it in a more efficient way, what's to say they're not coming here performing experiments, coming here picking us up and putting their alien makeup on us, testing to see if it kills, if it will kill their race. You know what I mean?
Or what about the idea that we're a zoo in the first place? We were all put here to by the aliens to see how which kind of human would last or whatever.
A kind of Prometheus seeding of planets.
It's their right to come sample our genetics because they put us here, right? Some people I'm sure might think that, right? But if I get a petri dish for a science project, if I get a petri dish and I put and I touch something in there and I wait a couple of days and it grows into bacteria, like that's my bacteria, right? What if they planted humans here and then we evolved to this and then they're just like, all right, the fruit's ripe, time to start finally anal probing. Yes, this planet grew anuses. Yes.
Finally, they're
ready. The anal probes are. You know what I mean?
I
the
just think
stock
that
is getting used.
there would have to be a purpose for it, and maybe we don't understand the purpose. Maybe it's outside of our. But like I said, like I understand in our human societies, we've never met an indigenous race and not dominated them. Whoever has the most technology.
No, incorrect. The Zulu Nation.
They were dominated.
But
no, the Zulu Nation. It gave itself up. It destroyed and wiped out the United Kingdom people that were there to the point where they were like, well, we're bored here, and their own kings started to war against each other to the point where the UK could come back, and they basically were like, yeah, whatever, we'll get out of here and you can take over. But the first time that they came over and tried to invade that area, they got wiped off the face of the map, and they had machine guns back then.
This is different though because we're still talking about two species that ultimately are drawing arbitrary
similar.
lines in the sand. They can breed, not similar. We're the same species. Any one of their males and any one of the females from the other side could have had offspring that was virile and could go on to make. They weren't going to create a mule. That wasn't going to happen. No two races on the planet from one side and the other have ever made like a mule type thing where it wasn't supposed to happen. That can't happen, right? In fact,
Yeah, I mean, there was no hybrid humaning.
But
it was
what happens
just
when
humans.
when that happens? Now like you're actually
But
getting healthier,
if they had the
right?
technology to be able to just zip to another universe and it's not a big deal for them, then their scientific understanding would have to be so far beyond us.
And
I mean, wouldn't
imagine
it be if they
must
can
be
travel?
if they can do this.
Yeah, if they can travel, why wouldn't it be?
I mean, the theory has to presuppose that they're
I'm just
coming
saying it
here,
would be
they
so
must
far
have
Think about
beyond
it.
us.
Think about it.
You know,
Sorry. Think about it like this. If our space shuttles take us how long to get from here to the moon, you know what I mean, in time wise, think about it. If they can get from where they're going, and we're just talking a spacecraft, we're not even talking about any other technology, just spacecraft. If their spacecraft can travel between time or fold space and time together, they're already leaps and bounds ahead of us in everything. It's not just going to be, because that's just a vehicle. You know what I mean? There's no way that
Okay.
there's no way that they have sticks and stones back at their planet and they're rubbing sticks and stones to make fire, but yet they can travel in time. That makes no
So
sense.
exactly.
I
So
don't think
that's what I'm trying to say is like if they have that massive level of technology and that massive level advantage on us, then why would they mess up in
So what could they mess
I don't
up?
think it's messing around. I
grabbing
think
a
it's
human?
scientific. You come grab what you don't know and you don't understand, and you study it. That's the same thing humans do with anything we find alien or weird. I mean, for God's sake, we went to the moon. There was nothing there living, and we brought rocks back.
That's what
Why?
they say.
That's what they say when we landed there. Every time we go
Did we
somewhere,
land
we
there?
bring rocks back when
Scan
we
that
land there,
code
if
and
we
tell
land
us
there.
if you think we really landed on the moon.
But
I want to
that's
know.
just the point. Just because the technology is so much more dominant, you're thinking of it as a conquer kind of thing. I think of it as a science kind of thing. Like, hey, look, we can go here. I don't know what the heck this thing is. Let's snag one and take it back. Why not? You know what I mean? You're going to figure it out. The best way of figuring out is to have one. And if you're sitting there and it's say for instance, a race of something that could hurt you, tiger, you're not going to go into, or bear, you're not going to go into a bear cave and start poking the bears to find out, why do bears have fur? Let's poke on these bears and see if the other bears don't kill us. You know what I mean? If they're aggressive, you leave them alone, or you dart one, you yank them out of the cave, you put them in a cage, take them back to where you're safe, your planet, your town, whatever, the zoo, and you study it. You know what I mean? Now, keep in mind, I'm also like, how long does that take? If they can travel from time to time, you being abducted as a human, it could be seconds. You know what I mean? They could snap you up, bring you back, and that was years of your life that you were probed, scanned, everything, and drop you back off at the same hour that you were there.
I
That's
don't
a
ever
theory,
worry about the how. I don't worry about the how. If they are getting here, if we were on the Titanic, or if it's actually happening, right? If we were on the Titanic, would we be worried about how could this have happened? No. No, I don't care what you think about us tilting this way. I was told this couldn't happen, right? Like, it's like the how it happened doesn't matter. Like, if they're actually coming here, then there's a reason. It's so important that they did use whatever means, right? Like, figuring out the how, I think that's for us to do after we capture some of their technology and the other thing going along with both this and the ancient thing, Bob Lazar, he says that when he worked at S4, Area 51, he says that the technology he was working with, like the ship that he was working with, he said that it appeared extremely old, like not like they had got this like this crashed in 1940 and then they recovered it. He goes, no, this looked like recovered from an archaeological dig. And it was so that's one of the things that, And unfortunately, I mean, he is.
Well, when you're moving through time like that, wouldn't it age whatever you're in?
You got
Back to the Future. I'll bring it up later.
Okay, well, there was only ice on the DeLorean. All right,
that was to keep it cool when it traveled through time. That wasn't. Just move on. I'm sorry.
Okay, the fire was in this side. Okay, then traveling.
The fire was the tires burning off. Because they're not made of metal, and the friction between the tires and the road made it light on fire. I mean, come on,
can you
simple.
get me the whiteboard? I need to map out the flux capacitor.
I'm gonna need a diagram for this.
All right. Yeah. No, but look, it was cold because of like the null space, the non-time frame, no heat, right? He had ice immediately because just it was degrading the material of everything. It was turning into its base materials and carbon and turning into dry ice on around it, right? It was
Sure. I ain't arguing with you. Sure.
Hang on, bro.
Hear me out. You
like that? You see, and we are the giants. We are the Nephilim. That's why we can't find smaller bones. What else do I think? No, I don't really think that. It's all just, I mean, interesting things, that
I don't know. There's I forget where they have that ancient ruin, but there's an ancient ruin where the steps are about 2 times larger than it would be comfortable for an average sized person to walk up.
Like they have that.
Don't they talk about that? The Malta and Mayan temples and all that.
Malta's over in the Mediterranean.
These steps aren't the right size. It's like, well, they are if you're giant.
Ooh,
well, I was remembering it's somewhere in the the Iraq area. It's like one of those. It's that one where they show that's built into the mountain, like a tomb, like a. Nineveh, I think wasn't it used in
Nineveh, Army of Darkness?
Wasn't it? I'm saying wasn't it?
They used
wasn't it used in?
Indiana Jones, you're thinking.
Indiana Jones. There you go. Yeah, Indiana Jones. Wasn't it used in that one?
Probably, but I'm pretty sure we're talking about the one from Army of Darkness as well, because it was ancient Nineveh.
Well, because I was gonna say, like, right? Everybody sees the pictures. Everybody sees the pictures of that ruin, but they don't ever show a person standing on there. And when you see a person standing there, the steps are about to, like, where your knees are.
Yeah.
So like you literally have to like do a huge lift your leg up to your waist to get up the next step.
The ziggurat in Nineveh,
and it's like, that isn't. Well, I don't
Petra,
know.
The city of Petra. I just looked
Petra.
It's in Jordan.
Oh, Petra, yeah. That's,
Jordan.
But right by Jordan, yeah, not far from where my wife's family is from too. So,
look up, see if there's a picture of humans standing next to, because you see a lot of pictures of Petra.
Yeah.
But then they don't have any but then the steps walking into it are not regular size.
But there's also
it's one of those.
It's not many finished places. It's like a facade.
They do have them, but yeah, it is gigantic. He's not kidding. I mean, the opening of it's probably 4 people tall. The doorway is 3 to 4 people tall. It's huge.
Malta, there's.
And it's why would they?
Tombs, but.
And then the other thing that they talk about too. What do they talk about? I remember where it was at. I forget off the top of my head, but the giant stuff is always here in Las Vegas, or Nevada, inside of the Grand Canyon somewhere is supposedly a cave full of ancient Egyptian / Phoenician
red hair, right? The red hair.
What? Crazy.
No, there's this. So if you go back into old newspapers, there was an article of how they found something here in the Grand Canyon, and it's supposedly a full-blown cave, and it's supposedly been excavated by, I forget the museum that supposedly has all this. What do they call it? All the conspiracy theories around those guys. Supposedly they're the ones that are killing all the giant bones. And what was that?
Smithsonian.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
The Smithsonian.
Yes, those guys.
Yeah.
Supposedly,
so hiding all of the
Smithsonian supposedly the Smithsonian took over that area, and then
I heard
from
that.
what I've heard from hikers and kayakers, there are areas on
Wow.
the Grand Canyon. What's that? What's that river? The Colorado, that
Yes.
you're not allowed to go down. That they actually,
Really.
from what I've heard, military slash private security looking folk walk out there and say, "Hey, you're not allowed to come down here. Or you're
I
not allowed
mean,
to go over
Area
here."
52 has to be somewhere, you know?
And then those areas actually have, like, supposedly there's these people on the internet that search what's it called, by the satellites,
Yeah.
and there's areas that have had the area erased, and they use some kind of algorithm to
Yeah.
erase the ground to make it look like it's regular ground.
Yeah.
But people are figuring out that algorithm and finding areas that are, and like I said, there's a whole search
They
for
look
this stuff
patched.
going on,
Yeah.
and they're trying to find that cave.
Yeah,
And it's
it's a
like,
simple
was it,
Google search too. Actually, weirdly enough, you're right.
like I said, there's supposedly a
1909, a
cave.
1909 newspaper wrote about it, a Gazette.
Yeah, and then what's funny is supposedly there was a whole bunch of supporting documents that go along with that, and supposedly there was a whole bunch of, like, people have found Smithsonian records of them sending people to the area, and there's supposedly records of cargo ships being pulled out of the area. But then now all those records are, because now it's all secondhand. Not like I saw the records, but now they're all gone.
Yeah, it's
Like
interesting. They
all,
talk about like a cave having hieroglyphics in 1909, and then 1910. It's all about how there's areas of the Grand Canyon that is dangerous for people to hike in.
yep.
Weirdly, 1 year later, they go, "Hey, wait a minute! It's dangerous to be down here, you guys."
There was a bowl
And
that they
again,
found that was supposedly Sumerian. That it had like inscriptions that looked like they were ancient Sumerian that they found in um, South America or Central America, I believe. And they were like, could the Phoenician or ancient Sumerians have been seafaring, come all the way over here, or could this be proto language that is that was like the split? This is like, there was the Nile Valley, the Mesopotamian, the Indus, and people who went really really far, right? Like, what if it was that?
yeah, yeah,
And so, yeah, all of these things that are possibilities, and no one's ever said something that seemed to be that good enough of an answer. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
there's got to
Well,
be
my
something.
my thing, my thought process on, like, I do believe that there once was a very powerful civilization, technology wise. I don't know what realms of technology that they dominated in, but I think they were I'm pretty sure they were seafaring. I'm pretty sure, because like you look at the Polynesian cultures and all
Oh
that.
yeah,
Um, the, what do they call the stone dudes? What are they
the
called?
Moai on Easter
The
Island.
Eastern
The
Island, yeah,
Yeah, and it's like they start seeing all these massive workings in
Yeah,
stone, and I'm thinking that something occurred that caused, and if you listen to some of the other YouTubers that are out there, they talk about, like, shift in the magnetic poles that
yeah.
caused massive weather changes and situations like that. Supposedly, there's
Hey, if someone wanted to call in
evidence
and talk
at the
about
Sphinx.
Tartaria, I'll let you through. You know what I mean? You can talk
Supposedly,
about
there's
Tartaria for a
evidence at
second.
the
I'll hear you out.
Sphinx, the 12,000 years ago, that the Sphinx might have been
There's water
built
erosion.
in a jungle, a water
There's
erosion. There's
water
possibly that it was
erosion.
a rainforest,
Dr.
and
Robert
it's one of those
Schoch
questions.
discovered that, Boston University.
Yeah, and there's questions of whether or not
All
we don't
stuck in my head.
understand. And what's funny is, my thing is, I think that we're looking in the wrong areas as far as for older civilizations. I think that we need to start looking underwater, but not like in the middle of the Atlantic or anything, but like I'm talking about, like, maybe 150 miles off a coast.
Yeah. Yeah.
like water changes,
The water
because
rises.
all older um, societies were always based around the water. Every major
Always.
society that we know of was close to
Even
a lake or a
today,
river
most of our in Washington
the
D.C., everything still. We always do that.
yeah.
We learn nothing.
And
You
it's
know.
just yeah, it's easy for transportation and things like that. But if you look at one of those theories where they talk about the ice caps melting and the water rising, maybe
That's proof now, right?
New York City's
Not
gone
why,
in
but
in
it's for
50
sure.
years. Who
Yeah, it's
knows?
more of a win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but who knows?
I agree. I think that it's probably just off the coast somewhere, not far. I
So I
think one of the
from
best.
one the one that blew my mind recently was they found ruins off of the coast of Japan.
That one is
Looks
interesting
like
too.
ancient. That blows my mind. It looks like there's an ancient. They want to say that there's possible pyramids there as well, and it's like huge, massive, megalithic stone structures,
Did
and
you
it
did you hear
looks like
about
it
the?
might be man-made.
Do you know about the Azores? You know about the Azores?
Azores.
So
Which one's that one?
it's an island chain that if you go from Portugal and Spain, right in that area that we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, was once called the Pillars of Heracles or Hercules, right?
Oh, you talk about where
Where
Atlantis
Atlantis
is?
was, right? But there is an island chain called the Azores, right? And a couple of things still sticking up. Now, if water was rising, there is that place right there, and there has been. I think it was. Let me think. It was. Oh man, I love him. He's a geologist. He is Randall Carlson. Randall Carlson, I think, at least may have proposed that is a great place to look because, like, well, we have people living there on the tops of the islands. Like if water was lower and it was a bigger place,
Yeah.
but we see similar places.
Yeah,
All
when
over.
you look at that, it looks like it's sunk into the land or sunk into the ocean, like a top of a giant mountain,
The Azores
but it
are,
looks like it just is
yeah.
sunk in. That's wild.
Yeah.
It begins with the A. What if all we remembered is the A?
Just saying, like if you look at Japan, right off, like Japan is the same kind of island structure, high mountains. Like if we
Yeah,
pull back the water 50, 60 feet, I wonder what's there. Like I
yeah,
really do.
yeah. You never know.
And then there's other places too, like the Bimini, the Bimini Road. Have
Oh,
you guys ever looked that up?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Look that
Bimini
one up,
Road.
Elgin. That one will blow your mind.
Off over near the Bermuda Triangle, where some people want to say it is a natural geological formation. Other people think it's the remnants of Atlantis, because those are for the people who think that
Yeah, I've heard
Atlantis
that one.
is in Cuba, right off the coast of Cuba, right. That's similar to
Yeah.
that because
What's
near Bimini.
funny is my theory is I've been watching it. I forget this guy. I think he's a YouTuber. Bright Insight, I think is what he calls
Yeah,
himself. I've watched him for a bunch. He thinks that it was in the Sahara Desert area,
yeah,
and there's like an area where it actually shows where it could have possibly been, but it looks like it might have been washed away by some type of maybe a tsunami. It looks like something that pulled the ground all the way to the bedrock off the face of the earth. How many thousands of gallons that would be, I don't know. But my theory would be if that did exist at one point and there were survivors, maybe the actual, like for instance, let's say like the main city was destroyed, but what if there was a couple of like offshoot little cities that were still available, and then those people traveled thinking that, or maybe there was damage to their area, but just not as much. And then they traveled to other areas. But let's say they all left around the same period of time. And then wherever they landed, they tried to rebuild whatever it is that they did. And that could be one of the reasons why it seems like technology regresses. Like the people had the information and knowledge and technology, but their main city was wiped out. And then the remnants of those people moved to Egypt, moved to Machu Picchu, moved to all these different areas in the world and built their, like,
There
what
was
they
only
remember from their
0.06
society.
of their population, like Cappy was talking about.
Like Kathy was talking about, exactly.
I think that.
And here's
Fucking
the thing
psychic,
too is,
man. Psychic.
what
Was I
what
right?
if those people?
Did
Well, I'm
I
just
get
saying,
that
what if
number
what
right?
if
Did I get that number right or something or what? Wait, did you look something up and
what
find
if
out that that number I said
my
at the
my
beginning was
my,
right?
my thinking would be, what if
That's a clip. Somebody clipped
not very
something.
many of
I
them
don't know
did
what
survive,
happened.
but
It
they
might be a
came with the
clip.
technology
Please.
and then started, mingling with the people of the area.
Or like we were talking about earlier, people saw the technology and were like, this is magic. You shouldn't be showing this, and smashed up that technology and it got lost forever.
Or again, what if there was
Well,
just
then
an
there's
island
that.
of people
There-
who had such great technology that they were like gods fighting amongst each other in the skies? Then we write these things like the Mahabharata and the Ramanaka Shastra,
Could have been.
right? And that's where, like, what if we actually saw these great things and they blew themselves to hell, and like what little people were left after this who came out of caves, like the caves in Malta, the caves all over the world that are like built deep down for
Yeah, that's
what?
scary stuff.
Yeah, like what were you hiding from? What did you know was coming? What were
Yeah.
you told? Who helped you do this? How'd you dig this? Like there's a spot in
Yeah.
most of these places where if you stand in this one place, there's a resonance that echoes throughout the entire chamber. You can stand in one spot and speak
Yeah.
like this, and everyone throughout the entire cave system, 3-level cave systems, they'll
Yeah.
be able to hear you
Well,
make announcements. Insane
That
stuff.
is I don't know if you guys ever, what do they call it? The Coral Palace?
Coral Castles. Sorry.
Coral Castle.
I
there
hate
you
knowing
go.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
Edward Leeds Scalman.
Yeah.
I
No,
love that whole story.
that guy.
I'm
What was
crazy
the guy's
for knowing all
name?
this stuff. Ed Leeds Scalman.
Well, yeah.
Edward
Well,
Leeds
supposedly
Mm-hmm.
he had a technology that was possibly sound based that allowed him to levitate / move objects.
It was
And maybe
magnets
he-
in there too. Yeah, it was magnets that he put together with an old like Ford engine block, and he had the magnets rotating around, right? And so, but from what pictures he let out, so it's insane stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess the story.
Oh yeah. Well, my like I was watching this thing that was blowing my mind.
I downloaded his books.
They were
Sorry, go on.
showing. Well, no, they were showing like some researcher. It was some what was it? Some video I was watching at one point, and it was blowing my mind a little bit. It was talking about how some of the signs that ancient I don't know what language it was actually look like when we make a noise.
Mm-hmm.
So their
Mayan,
way
I
of
think.
writing was the way of what the what do they call that? The sound wave
Yeah.
of that tone would make. So their language was based off of sound, and they would, instead of like, because we have the ah for the A
Yeah.
and ba for the B, but theirs was like tonal. So
Mhm.
like how we have the tones of music,
Yeah.
that's how their language was. And the way we would write the sound on a
More like writing
like on a
music?
piece of paper is the way that's how that. And it's like, it was blowing my mind that they were actually saying that. And who, like I said, that might be a technology that we're just not developing.
Not just
Like, what if there
technology.
is
I think that language is magic, dude. Honestly, language is like the only real kind of magic thing that we have. If there were two people speaking Mandarin or Cantonese Chinese, I'm just saying, if they have a way of making sounds with their mouth, and they could be having a conversation about the legal system in another country, even, right? You know what I mean? They could be discussing the proper way to perform a surgery. They could be two doctors, and I would have a hard time listening to two doctors or lawyers use that kind of jargon in my own native language, right? I don't know all of those terminology words to understand, right? So, but they could carry on maybe an even more depth conversation than the one I could have overheard from two people speaking English, right? That's magic, right? Like there's To me, and some people, deride that and say things like, oh, clicks and, blah 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 sounds. It's all Greek to me or whatever but that's phenomenal. Like no there's no end in sight for how we can order a language, and even Tolkien created a real language. We were talking about this before. They actually created Elvish for Lord of the Rings. They actually created Klingon. Like you can make a language like that's, it's really just about, can you get enough people to speak it in the same place at the same time? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be. I think that idea might also. So another technology that we might not be developing might be our psychic abilities. Like maybe we have them, but we're just not taught how to develop them. Maybe they're all there. Maybe all those what do they call those guys? The monks that can do insane things, that can control, like supposedly there's guys that don't breathe for 8-9 minutes at a time. There's people that can slow their heartbeat down to 2-3 beats per minute. Supposedly all that's real, supposedly. And it's like, maybe if we developed our mind more, we can control the subconscious part, like the actual, stuff that we can't, like the digestive system. Maybe if you developed your mind strong enough, you might be able to physically make your stomach digest something or something like that. And then the question becomes, like, how much psychosomatic stuff happens? Like, for instance, how many times are people told that, oh, you have a terminal illness, and then they just like give up on life?
Mm-hmm.
And how many times do you see the opposite, where there's somebody like, no, I'm going to fight it, and then they're given 6 months, but then 6 years later, you know what I mean? And it's like, how much of that is like your brain, you know what I mean? Like how much, because how many husbands and wives, like the husband is 70 years old and he dies, and then the wife dies 6 months later. Like how many times does that kind of stuff happen? So it's like, how much control over our body does our brain have that we don't know that it has?
This is a whole nother episode you're leading Cappy into,
because I definitely would love to talk about this. Elgin knows that I think I'm a psychic, but just psychology, and I mean, literally, I can't be right. I can't be right, and that's why I fuck up and fail. Right, like I don't know how to develop it, and it's scary, and so he thinks that a real psychic would overcome it, and I say no. I think a real psychic
self-sabotage.
I think that besides having maybe a sixth sense, maybe being a psychic, there is still your own human psychology. You know what I mean? And maybe the way you were raised. If you were raised in a way that says psychics are wrong, and you just always want to believe like I couldn't be right, even if they are, like I couldn't be one, right, or something. Cop on Topaz.
Well. We were talking about that.
Chanticleer.
No, I was talking about that with Elgin earlier when I was saying about how, like, intuition, like how much of intuition is actual insight or psychicness, or how much of it is maybe your brain is processing things
like faster than what your actual body can handle. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like dogs, for instance. There's a lot of dogs that can see somebody and just know that's a bad guy. And it's like, are they psychic, or are they, maybe they noticed a pattern in aggressive people? Maybe, because like that's one of the things that I've started, like when I was doing security and surveillance, and you watch a crowd of people, like after you start seeing the patterns over a while, like I remember the situation where I was
patterns.
Yep. No, I pointed right at this guy. I was like, look, we got to keep an eye on this guy right here. Looked like a regular guy, t-shirt, shirt. Like didn't look like he was like, I'm trying to say, he didn't look like he was homeless.
Yeah.
Didn't look like he was a thug gangster guy, but he was just walking regularly. And then he happened to look over and saw something, and then his whole body language changed. Like he hunched over a little bit. He kind of did the left and right look, and then, decided to go over and try to grab some lady's purse and run off. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't think that guy woke up this morning thinking about, I'm going to rob somebody or I'm going to steal something. I think that guy just saw an opportunity. But I think that guy also saw the opportunity, and it changed his demeanor. Like maybe he was like, oh, I'm going to go chill out tonight. And then he sees something, like, oh, I'm going to be a criminal, or I'm going to be a predator right now. And something changed in him. And it's just one of those things where it's like, how much of that are we seeing? Like, how much, like, is that psychic, or is that just intuition, or is that just recognizing patterns?
Let's definitely wrap that up and save that one for next one, because that is a 2 hour long conversation with Cappy. I started
So
it.
much
I
fun.
started it on
Elgin
accident.
knows I keep smiling at
and
him. I'm looking into the
I
camera.
started it on
His face is
accident
over
with
there.
him,
I'm smiling
and
at
we
him.
almost podcasted from our phones at work. So let's actually call it a episode for the night.
My mom's a
and
psychic
then we'll
too. She just won't believe it. She won't believe it. Her faith won't let her believe it. That woman's a psychic. That's where I get
well,
it.
yeah,
Sounds good.
let's
But
wrap
anyway,
it up on
have a
this
great
one.
night,
And then
everyone. Thank you. If anyone was watching, please let us know what you want to, see or call us. If you want to come on and talk, if you're a psychic, what am I thinking right now? Give me your best guess. All right, everyone. That was another one, an impromptu, a Wednesday.
Here's my psychic, because I saw you smoking pot. You're thinking about eating some snacks.
You got to quit that, Elgin. Everybody have a good night.